Okay, I think initiated the recording. No worries. You are recording. Okay. Yeah. So now the recording has been started. Great. So let's talk about it. Now, since today's time we will spend on the fundamentals and then remainder 4 days we'll focus on the administration part. So let's build a good fundamental for cloud. Let's start from the scratch. Let's start with the word cloud, CLOUD. What is our understanding of cloud? What do we mean by cloud? Or what comes to our mind when we hear this word? When somebody says cloud, what comes to our mind? Henry, I'll start with you. So Henry, what comes to your mind when somebody says cloud?
Something that's not on premise, I guess you would say. It's remote.
Okay, all right. What about others? Nivedita, what comes to your mind when somebody says cloud?
Like through database perspective, if I say a single point where I can access everything.
Okay. All right. So when somebody says cloud, I feel as if I am in hills. I'm in Uttarakhand. Uttarakhand. So, so I'm based out of Delhi, guys. And, people who are living in Delhi, when they want to, chill out, when they want to spend their weekend and they want to spend it outside of Delhi, you have very limited options uh, within the 100 and 200 miles. So you have Uttarakhand. So I typically go to Rishikesh. I typically go to Haridwar. I typically go to the hill stations which are nearby. And that's what comes to my mind when somebody says, because, in Delhi, you don't get to see sky, you don't get to see stars, it's all polluted everywhere. That's what comes to my mind. All right. So when it comes to cloud as a technology, what is cloud? As Henry has rightly said, this is something which is not set up on premises. That's what Henry you said, or something which is far from you, something which is remote. That's what cloud is all about. Now I'll share this incident. One of my participants, I asked him the same question and I said, what comes to your mind when you hear the word cloud computing or cloud? He said, I feel as if something is set up in space similar to International Space Center. There's a huge facility, and in that huge facility, they have put in their data center, and from that data center we are consuming. And in that data center they have made a couple of services available, and we are actually consuming those services from that data center. And that's what cloud computing is all about. That's the response that I've got. Uh, so this is what comes to mind when people hear cloud. Everyone has its own observation, has its own perception about cloud, but in technology terminology, what cloud is, as Henry has rightly said, partially correct, cloud is something which is remote to you for sure. But yes, it is on premises. There is absolutely nothing in the sky. There is absolutely nothing next to International Space Station, set up somewhere in the space where, you send, engineers, architects, security architects, database engineers or SMEs who travel to that data center, stays there for some time, and then they come back and somebody else takes over. No. Cloud is services that you access over the services which are delivered from remote. And how they are delivered, how do you access those services? How do you consume those services? You consume them over the internet. So you have a system which has internet connectivity, and then you consume the services which are offered on cloud. So it has got a couple of definitions. You have a definition for cloud on Wikipedia. You have a definition for cloud or cloud computing given by Forrester. If you've not heard about Forrester, Forrester is an analyst firm, and which is trusted across the globe. They do research and analysis. They observe the market, they observe the trend, they identify technologies, they evaluate those technologies, and then they present their report. They present their observation or their outcome of that evaluation, which most of the businesses across the globe trust Gartner for their insights. Gartner releases a magic quadrant, which is nothing but a reporting method through which they compare, different technologies. So Gartner has a magic quadrant for cloud computing. Gartner has a magic quadrant for SIM solutions. It has magic quadrant for entire, EDR solutions, endpoint detection and response. It has magic quadrant for database solutions. It has magic quadrant for service providers. So it basically releases its report in the form of a magic quadrant, which has 4 sections, and it says that who are the visionaries, who are the challengers, who are the leaders. That's what it talks about. We'll see Gartner's magic quadrant for Microsoft Azure in the subsequent slides. So let's come back to what is cloud. Now that's the definition that I get from various sources. You can give it a quick read. So it refers to servers that are accessed over the internet and softwares and databases that run on those servers. Cloud servers are hosted in data centers all over the world. So it's remote data centers all over the world. Now, when it comes to Microsoft Azure, can somebody tell me how many how many data centers or regions Microsoft Azure has in India? People
One,
who have been working with Microsoft
one,
Azure. Sorry?
one near Mumbai.
Mumbai. Okay. What about others?
I guess a couple of them are there. One is under pipelines. In total, three.
So 3 including the pipeline or 3 plus 1?
No, 2 plus 1.
Okay. All right. What about others?
42.
42 in India. That's too much. All right. So Microsoft Azure has 3 regions in India. There is absolutely that they have not announced. So there is no announcement for the 4th region as we speak. However, they are in talks with Government of India to set up a dedicated region which will be dedicated to Government of India websites, Government of India portals. So that's what they are doing. So there are 3 regions basically. We have 1 region in South, we have 1 region in West, we have 1 region in Central. So these are the 3 regions. We will see that information in the subsequent slides. So regions are nothing but collection of data centers. Microsoft Azure has 3 regions and a couple of data centers inside those regions. Now let's come back to this slide. What is cloud computing? So now you know that clouds are servers which are hosted in data centers across the world. What is cloud computing? Now what Gartner says cloud computing is a style of computing in which scalable. Now these are the words that you need to focus on. So Gartner says in which scalable and elastic IT enabled capabilities are delivered as a service using internet technologies. So scalable, which means you can you can actually increase the configuration. You don't need to plan for the capacity. You need 1 server, you go with 1 server, you need 10 servers, you will get 10 servers on the fly, which is scalability. Elasticity, on demand. Whatever you need, you will be given on demand. So cloud computing is a type of computing where scalable and elastic IT enabled capabilities or services are delivered using internet technologies. So typically you have a laptop which has an internet connection. You subscribe to a cloud, which is Microsoft Azure, and you start to consume Microsoft Azure services right from your laptop. That's what cloud technologies, cloud computing is all about. Wikipedia, it says that it's on-demand availability of computer system resources. Now what those services are, they are computer systems, applications, databases, monitoring tools, analytic services. These are the services which are delivered through cloud computing. Now, when I say those services are delivered, how those services are hosted. So those services are primarily hosted using a combination of storage, CPU, memory. That's what the hardware is. Any service that you want to host, let's say you want to host a website, what do you need? You need a server, you need a network, you need a public IP address, and you need the website code. These are the things that you need. You will build them together, you know, connect them together configure them together and your website will be hosted. So similarly, in cloud computing, you have similar setup. It's just that you are accessing that setup from the internet. Now, since this is cloud computing and you are consuming services from there, first of all, let's see if we have been using cloud services in the past or not. Can somebody tell me a cloud service that you have been using for a long time?
Gmail.
I think Gmail and our email thing. No, it's on cloud.
Yep.
Google Drive.
Google
Dropbox.
Drive, okay.
Dropbox.
Dropbox, great.
Facebook.
Okay, Facebook. All right. Yes. So, all cloud storage, OneDrive, Google Drive, Dropbox, these are cloud storage. We have been using it for a long time. I'm saying there could be a probability that you are not using Dropbox, but most of the people, they have an email account with a service provider. If you have an email account with Microsoft, you get OneDrive. If you have it from Google, you get Google Drive, and these are cloud storage. We actually upload data, files, documents in cloud storage, and we access it from anywhere. That's what cloud computing is all about. What we need is a system, is a device that has internet connectivity, and then we can access the cloud services from anywhere. Now, when I am using a Gmail account, when I'm using OneDrive, and when I am putting data on the OneDrive, can I only access it from India, New Delhi, where I create that OneDrive, from? No, I can also access it from anywhere in the world. Yes, there is a security configuration which will trigger up when I access my OneDrive or Google Drive from outside of India. It will say that it could be a hacking attempt. I will need to validate, yes, it's me who is doing this, and I will be able to access it. So which means cloud computing is on-demand services which are delivered using the internet technologies, and they are available across the world. You can access those services from anywhere in the world at any point in time. They are round the clock available. Is it making sense, guys? Cloud computing now?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Now, what those services are, this is what it says. So those services are computing power, storage, networking, analytics, and there could be more services. But these are the typical, most common, most preferred, or most used services from the cloud. When I say compute power, it basically means you provision servers, which are hosting Linux, Unix, Microsoft Windows operating systems. You are deploying web applications, your applications which are internal to your corporate on those servers. Storage, in order to store data, which could relate to your virtual machine's disk, which could relate to any discrete data or object data, which is a Word document, PowerPoint, an Excel sheet, and a PDF document, a Notepad, WordPad, OneNote, any object data. You can also use cloud storage. Networking, you can use networking to create a secure connection between the cloud provider and your company. What do we call that connection when we create a secure connection between two sites?
VPN.
Great, VPN, virtual private network. So when you create a secure connection between two sites, your on-premises site where you are sitting, for example, my laptop, I can create a VPN from my laptop to Microsoft Azure network, which primarily means that there will be a secure connection between my laptop and Azure, and we will do that during this training. We'll create a VPN connection between your laptop and Microsoft Azure network that you will create. So we can also use networking services, we can use security services, we can use analytics services, which is Power BI, visualizing telemetry and performance data. These are some of the services which are offered by cloud provider or which are part of cloud computing. Now, like they say, an image is worth 1,000 words and a video is worth 1,000 images. This image says it all. After I heard the sentiments of one of my participants that cloud is a facility, similar setup as International Space Station, I came across this image and I added this image then and there in my training slide. So there is no cloud. It's just someone else's computer or server. That's what cloud is all about. I hope it makes sense now. Now, we talked about cloud. We talked about cloud computing. Let's see how many types of cloud are there which exist. So we have a couple of cloud types which exist. Let's see. So the first is public cloud. What a public cloud is? Please read what is there in what is written there. It says a public cloud is an infrastructure, platform, or application that a cloud service provider, in short, we call it CSP, cloud service provider. That it could be an infrastructure, could be a platform, could be an application that a cloud service provider delivers, which is accessible and which is consumed by the public. So public cloud relates to services which are accessible and consumed by public, which means that it is available for everyone out there. That's public cloud. Then we have another type of cloud, which is private cloud. What a private cloud is, as the name suggests, which says you also deliver infrastructure, you also deliver application, you also deliver platform. However, in this arrangement, that consumption is limited to a single organization, which is private cloud. So corporates, most of the corporates, they create private cloud for themselves. And in that private cloud, they host applications which are consumed by their employees, their partners, their vendors who belongs to that organization. Excuse me. So that's private cloud is all about. Now, as I said, it says used by a single organization. When I say partner and vendors, the organization has the capability of expanding the private cloud solution to their partners and vendors as well, who could not be an employee of the organization. How? Through VPN. So even, all my participants who are working, on your corporate laptop that has been given to you, that laptop has a VPN client. When you need to access an application which is internal to your employer, you always connect to the VPN first and then you access the application. Why? Because those applications are only available within the corporate network, within the corporate VPN. And that's what makes them application, a candidate for private cloud. So that's private cloud. Then comes another type of cloud, which is hybrid cloud. Now, how hybrid cloud is different? Hybrid cloud is not a cloud. It is an arrangement through which you connect your public and private cloud resources and services. That's hybrid cloud. It's a technology which binds two separate clouds, public and private.
So Raghuveer,
Mhm.
yeah, Raghuveer, sorry to cut you short here. So as we talked about private cloud, right? If we are actually extending the services and the accessibility to our partners, we utilize VPN. So
Yeah.
if we actually go by the definition for hybrid as well, right?
Mhm.
It is more or less similarly serving the same purpose. So how exactly these two are different, right?
No, no. So hybrid is enabling the communication between public and private. There could be a
Okay.
probability that to your vendors and partners, you are not exposing everything that you host in your infrastructure. You're just exposing one portal. For example, you are into manufacturing. You have a couple of suppliers. You will need to communicate with the suppliers and request demand for various products that you need to build. So you will build a portal which will also be accessible by the suppliers, but that portal is hosted in your private cloud. When it is hosted in private cloud, it means that it is not available over the internet. So your suppliers will first connect to the VPN, then only they can access the portal and they can fill in the information, right? That's the private cloud. Hybrid is when you bind or when you arrange connectivity between two clouds. So you also have a public cloud. Let's say you are from Allscripts. Allscripts also has a public cloud. They have a couple of applications hosted in Microsoft Azure. They also have a couple of applications hosted in their on-premises data center in the form of a private cloud. Now, these applications needs to communicate with each other. So in an ERP solution, when you have multiple applications, applications are downloading data, referencing data from one another. If you have that need of communication, then you will need to bind both the clouds. You need to create a connectivity between those two clouds. And it is not only the connectivity, you also need to configure the routing. You also need to configure the access. You also need to configure the security so that the communication is safe. That's what hybrid is all about when you are connecting the clouds. Now, you can have one public cloud, you can have multiple public clouds. So for a large corporate, they will have Microsoft Azure, AWS, GCP, Oracle, Alibaba, because they are multinationals. And depending on the geography that they do business in, whichever cloud provides them, services at a cheaper cost, they will go with that cloud. So they will end up having multiple clouds. Now, since it is one corporate, all those applications needs to communicate, needs to share data and information. The arrangement that you will make to enable that communication is known as hybrid cloud. So which basically means if somebody says that I'm using a hybrid cloud, it basically means that they have some footprints on public cloud. They also have some applications hosted in their on-premises data centers, and they have enabled the communication. That's what qualifies for a hybrid cloud. So most of the
So this
corporates these days
so
are
this
using
integ
hybrid. Yeah.
okay. So this integration, right, from public to private, that actually maps towards a hybrid cloud. So we'll be discussing that, right?
Yeah, so that's
Okay.
hybrid is, and you don't, it's not a cloud technology. It's the method. It's the
Okay.
technology that binds them together. And there are multiple things that comes into the picture. As I said, you will look into the identity and access management. You will look into the networking. You will look into the data security. You will look into the network firewall. VPNs. So this, the collection of this technology is known as hybrid, and this technology will make these cloud hybrid. So if you want to consider it in layman language, most of the corporates, they are now hybrid. They are not using public, they are not using private, they are using a hybrid cloud wherein they have equal footprints on both the clouds. That's what hybrid is all about. So we will be focusing on public cloud in this training, not on the private cloud, that how do we build a private cloud or what are the pros and cons. We will not focus on hybrid because we don't have an on-premises environment which is running a couple of applications and we need to connect those applications to public. But we will create a VPN connection from our laptop to Microsoft Azure. Now, if you consider your laptop is hosting an application which is available to the rest of the internet or which is available internally to your organization, then it will become hybrid cloud. The moment you have your network connect, the moment you have your laptop connect with Azure. If you have that arrangement, then you will need to factor other things as well, which is security, networking, communication, identity, and other factors. So that's hybrid is all about. Moving on, then there is another type of cloud which is known as community cloud. Now this cloud is gaining momentum as we speak. Public and private cloud has its own pros and cons, its own advantages and disadvantages, and they could not be an ideal solution for some of the businesses which has a specific requirement. Those requirements are related to security, compliance, and jurisdiction. So these public cloud providers, they are not meeting those requirements. When it comes to private cloud, it will not be expandable over the internet. They cannot scale it. They cannot, because private means a data center where you are hosting the cloud. The data center will be within the geographical boundaries of a country or of a state, and there will be limitations with respect to compliance and jurisdictions, that if you can host applications which are accessible across the globe from that data center. So there's a lot that comes into the picture. Now, because of these advantages and disadvantages of public and private cloud, a new type of cloud came into existence, which is known as community cloud, wherein several organizations with common concerns or common objective in mind, which are security, compliance, and jurisdiction, they actually create a cloud for themselves, or they have a cloud created by some provider for themselves that they will only use. That's known as community cloud. The example of community cloud is Salesforce Cloud, GCC, Government Community Cloud. Our government of India has also created a cloud for themselves, which is Meghraj Cloud. On that cloud, they're only hosting their applications. It is not available for the rest of the public. Tata Communications Limited, which is the wing of Tata, Tata Consultancy Service, they've also created a community cloud with the name Government Community Cloud, in short GCC. In that cloud, they're hosting a couple of websites for the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Information Technology, and Ministry of Communication. Similarly, Microsoft Azure, AWS, GCP, they are cloud service providers. They've also created a community cloud, which is only used by specific organizations. So Microsoft Azure has a couple of cloud data centers in US, which are only reserved for the government of US. Similarly, they've created a data center, in India. They are, as we speak, they're creating a data center in India, which will be reserved for the government of India. So that's what a community cloud is all about, which is gaining momentum these days. And most of the organizations are looking for customized options, which a public cloud cannot provide, which a private cloud cannot provide because it has its own limitations. So that's what community cloud is. Any question on these four types of cloud?
So Raghuveer, it's community cloud. Can we say it's similar like our private cloud?
No, it's not private cloud. See, private cloud is only meant for one organization, but community cloud is meant for multiple organizations with similar concerns in mind. Government of India, if you consider Government of India as one organization and different ministries which functions under it as part of that organization, then you can say that the community cloud which will be created for Government of India will be equal to a private cloud.
Yeah,
Then you
yeah,
can say the statement.
yeah.
But this is not the essence of it. The essence is that every organization within Government of India has its own independent budgeting, independent security requirements. I would say if I talk about the Defense Ministry, they will have more requirements when it comes to security as compared to Ministry of Health, as compared to Ministry of Commerce or Ministry of Information Technology. So the requirements will be separate. That is the reason we cannot call government cloud as a private cloud. Okay. Did you hear about this this news last year, which was everywhere, about JD contract for the Department of Defense in US, that it was with AWS? Somehow Microsoft got that contract for 10 billion US dollar. Then there was a legal suit that was filed because AWS accused Microsoft of kind of influencing their employees and getting the secret information which actually helped them win the contract. Did you notice that news? Okay, if you have not noticed it,
No.
the Department of Defense in US, they were using AWS cloud for hosting their applications. The contract was about to get over. It was scheduled for renewal. That point in time, somehow Microsoft you know that businesses compete with each other. There is a lot that happens, which is not good, but it happens. Some unethical practices, also happens. So somehow Microsoft got some critical information and Microsoft actually, bid for it, and Microsoft won the deal. And now, as we speak, Microsoft is hosting those mission critical data or applications for the US Department of Defense, which includes NASA, which includes other, departments which we don't have any visibility on, that Microsoft is hosting in its own data center. You can call it a community cloud because it is not one department. Department of Defense in US has multiple sub departments. So that's community cloud. But if you feel that it is one department, then it's a private cloud. But even if it's a private cloud, the department has not created it for themselves. It is being created by a third player. And that's what qualifies it for a community cloud, because Microsoft is doing it. They are not doing it by themselves. Private cloud would always mean a facility which is created by the organization, for the organization, for the people of the organization. That's private cloud. You will not ask others to create a private cloud for you. Yes, you could take help from experts out there, but the facility will be local to your data center. It cannot be outside of your data center. Community cloud will not be part of your data center. It will be, it will be set up in someone else's data center, will be managed by some provider. That's community cloud.
Perfect. Yeah, got it now. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, one
Now,
small question, Raghuveer.
yes.
Right. So in case, let's say if I'm an org and I want to have a setup here in India or anywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I go by the government compliance, right, will I be anyhow, let's say, forced, or would anyhow I'll be actually allowed only to utilize the this community thing, or I'm actually allowed, or all other clouds are anyhow compliant as per the local body laws?
Yep. The public clouds are compliant to the local government regulations and compliances. Since you are a private organization, you cannot use a government community cloud. You're not allowed to do that. But if you have certain restrictions that you need to comply with, cloud is a shared responsibility, which means you need to know your controls, your limitations, and then you need to evaluate the infrastructure which cloud service provider provides you to host your applications and workloads. You need to evaluate that infrastructure from the compliances point of view that you need to adhere to. It is your responsibility. They provides you with an infrastructure, so you can tell them. For example, you are governed by PCI DSS. Imagine that you are a company, you're a business operating in US. The US has PCI DSS. US has HIPAA compliance. Now these compliances basically, basically has certain controls which governs how do you manage the, for example, MasterCard. MasterCard is into payment industry. Payment industry has a compliance or standard which is known as PCI DSS, which basically says that how do you store financial information of your customer? How do you encrypt it? How do you share it? How do you share it across the transaction? All of that comes in PCI DSS. So if you need to comply with PCI DSS, there will be two things. First, the infrastructure on which you will host your application. Your infrastructure should comply with PCI DSS standards. Second, your application, it should also comply with PCI DSS. So PCI DSS compliance has a control checklist, which has some 40-50 controls. Those controls talk about infrastructure. Those controls talk about application. Those controls talk about authentication, network, security, physical as well as application security. So you need to align with those controls. That's how you host your applications and workloads in cloud, which basically means that not everything can go into public cloud. Why? There could still be certain compliances or regulations that public cloud cannot meet. And that's where you will continue to retain that workload and application running on premises in your own data center till the time public cloud starts to comply, or you retire that application and move on to a different application which public cloud complies or which is available in a different service model. So that's how it happens. A lot of decision, a lot of consideration goes into the background when an organization decides to finally migrate their workloads and applications into cloud. And then they don't migrate everything, they only migrate what they can, what public cloud supports, because there are compatibility issues as well. For example, one of you have said that you have a couple of 2008 R2 or 2008 Windows Server in your environment. You will, if you want to migrate them to Azure, you want to check if Azure supports it. Yes, Microsoft Azure actually says that now it is an unsupported operating system, but if you migrate it into cloud, we'll give you support for another 3 years. We'll give you security patches. That will be the sufficient time frame for you to plan the migration to the next version, which is either 2012 R2, which is also running an extended support as we speak. So you get some time to think through and take your decision. They are not putting a knife on your, on your forehead and they're asking you to do this. So yes, that's how it happens. And in the subsequent slides, you will see that what public cloud is good for, what are the shortcomings of public cloud, uh, what is the use case for a public cloud. You will see these three pieces of information in the subsequent slides that will clarify some of your doubts. So this is about the public cloud, which has some characteristics, which are public cloud has multiple end users, which means anyone can subscribe and create an account on public cloud and they can start to consume services from public cloud. Availability, it's available round the clock and it is the most common cloud deployment model. Connectivity over the internet. Skills, it does not require much skills. As a consumer, if I'm alien to public cloud, if I've not used public cloud in the past and if I want to start using public cloud, it doesn't require me to study before I start to consume public cloud or go for a certification. No deep technical knowledge is needed. However, some basics are needed. You need to understand how browser works. You need to understand how networking works. You need to understand what a virtual machine is. You need to understand, these things. That's the basic requirement that you need to have. Businesses can use multiple public cloud service providers. Azure is an example of it, and you see five, public cloud service providers there in the, in the picture. So you have Microsoft, Google, AWS, Alibaba, and Oracle. We have more cloud providers. As we speak, we have 200 plus public cloud service providers who exist, but you don't know them all because they are small players, and some of those players are local to a geography. But these are the players that you see in the, in the PPT. They are the global players. They are the leaders, and they are present in most of the countries and continents around the world. Any question on this slide?
Just one small question, right? If we were actually talking about some local players, so which one is the major one here in India? And in all these fives, right, which one is the major contributor, let's say, who's actually having the major share in the global market?
Okay, so in India, if you talk about public cloud providers, we have Cefi Limited. We have, TCL, as I said, Tata Communications Limited. ESDS is there. We have Cloud4C, which is a company set up from Hyderabad, which is doing a good business here. So we have a couple of companies, Cefi, TCL, ESDS, Cloud4C, and many more from India. When it comes to global, it bases on the parameters you can differentiate who is doing what. For example, if you look at if your parameter is who has premium customers, AWS. If your parameter is who has more customers in number, Microsoft. If your parameter is who provides good API microservices architecture? Google. If you say who is, who is offering cost-effective solutions? Alibaba. If you say who is good with database technologies? Oracle. So you will need to identify the parameters on which you can compare and correlate these cloud service providers. And that's where Gartner has multiple parameters. In infrastructure as a service parameter, AWS is leading the chart. In in PaaS services, which is platform as a service, which is another service delivery model for cloud, Microsoft is leading the chart. When it comes to SaaS services, Google is leading the chart. So that's how you can compare them. When it comes to the leaders, irrespective of the parameters, there has been a close fight between Microsoft and AWS, right from day one. And nobody is great. I would say it all depends. So as a consultant and architect, what is your job? Your job is to identify the best possible solution for your customer available in one of these cloud service providers, which is cost effective, performance oriented. So your customer would have some objectives in mind. The objectives are that my service has to be highly available, fault redundant, geo-distributed, I'm saying available across the geographies. Uh, it should be, and the cost is also one of the parameter, one of the imperative that I need to deal with. So keeping all of these factors in mind, you can suggest a service. For example, the cost of cloud services is not uniform across the globe. When you look at the monitoring services, which is log analytics in Azure Monitor in Microsoft Azure, these services are available at a cheaper rate in US as compared to Europe and India, Europe and Asia Pacific. AWS CloudWatch, which is the monitoring service, is available. I would say if you compare AWS CloudWatch monitoring with Microsoft Azure Monitor in India, AWS is cheaper and they provide similar capabilities. So if it is about suggesting a monitoring service from these cloud service providers in India, you will prefer AWS. But if it is about doing the same exercise in US, you will prefer Microsoft. So this is this requires a lot of considerations and observations, and then accordingly you can identify who is doing good or who is best in what technology. All right. I hope that answers your question.
Correct. We'll actually have to focus about our requirements, right? And basis then we can select the provider. Correct.
Yep.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Ravaraj, I
You
have a
should
question.
not be biased to a cloud. Throughout my learning, I have learned not to be biased with anyone. You cannot always preach a cloud because you understand it well. For example, I have spent more time working with Microsoft than AWS than Google. But when I am asked for a solution by my customer, I will make sure to do a thorough research on those parameters. And based on the outcome of that research, I will actually suggest a solution to my customer. That's what I do. I will not take into consideration whether or not I will be able to deploy that solution. That's the secondary thing. The first and foremost objective is to identify the right solution, irrespective of where it is available from. All right, Akshay, you have some question?
Yeah, so I wanted to ask that. So when you mentioned that there are small private cloud players as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
But me as an end user, I generally do not directly reach out to AWS or Microsoft or Google for my cloud services. I will always have a vendor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Through which um, I would be using their IT services, and then those vendors actually have contracts with Google and Microsoft, and they use the cloud services. So these private players you're referring to, are these also similar to vendors, or themselves have their own infrastructure and or data centers?
They have their own infrastructure and data centers, and they directly deal with customers. They do not have vendors. For example, if I talk about Wipro and HCL, they are the largest IT company in India. They have their own product and they also provide services. So they're also system integrators, consulting partners, and they have a couple of customers who they are providing services to. So HCL and Wipro is also managing the infrastructure for a couple of customers, providing them operational support. They're also helping those customers to migrate and move to public cloud. They're also selling or building solutions for those customers. And they also have expert SMEs or experts available for these clouds. And they also have relevant certifications. So AWS and Microsoft, they have a certification. Microsoft has a certification which is Azure Expert MSP. Azure Expert, Azure Expert Managed Service Provider. Both Wipro and HCL, they are Azure Expert MSP, which means they have the right expertise, right skills available to actually sell and or actually provide services for these cloud providers. So that's how it happens. Now, as a customer, these cloud service providers do not put any restriction on customers that they cannot directly deal with cloud service providers and they have to come via an agent, which is a managed service provider, which is in this case is Wipro or HCL, let's say. But what happens, since IT is not our bread and butter. IT is just a support function for business. Somebody who is into manufacturing business, they're just using IT to enable their business. And that's where they will not focus much on IT and they will let IT services to be delivered by these providers who will then connect this customer to one of the cloud service providers solution. That's how the technology world works. Small players, uh, these Wipro, HCL, they are not concerned about small players and their solutions because they don't want to actually invest their time and energy into learning those solutions and then proposing those solutions to their end users and customers. But those small clouds are also gaining momentum. There's a saying in business world, when you enter into a business, when you become an entrepreneur, you will get your fair share of business. If we talk about multiple companies offering the same solution, each company has some customers. That's what business is all about. So if tomorrow I release my own public cloud, if from my home, I'll purchase some hardware and I will configure that hardware and I'll start to offer services, to people, I will find my fair share of business. I hope I'm making sense, guys.
Yeah, but then again, you have to meet the prerequisite of Gartner. I mean, we cannot just put in a data center and start a cloud as in business, right?
No, we can do that. Nobody is stopping us. Why I need to align with Gartner? It's just that if I need to expand my business, then I need to do all the marketing. I need to connect with Gartner, invite Gartner and say, Gartner, can you come and evaluate my cloud? And can you just include my services in your quadrant as someone who is a visionary, because it starts with visionary, that I have also come into existence and very soon. That's how every business starts. I mean, say when Google announced their cloud services back in 2016, nobody, people would know that Google is a large corporate. Google provides many services. I would say for a small time player, challenges are more because you need to compete. You may not have that level of budget which these large corporates have. I mean, they have a lot of money. Microsoft, Google, AWS, they have lots of money and they can actually experiment on technologies. They can invest money. They can start businesses in any geography in a smaller time frame that you would take because you have budget constraints, you have other limitations as well. But they will also get their fair share of business for sure. For example, Cloud4C. Uh, I remember providing them, some consulting. They also started back in 2016 from Hyderabad. Today, they have customers across the globe. Majority of their business is coming from UAE. UAE has some 26, 27 countries. Majority of their business is coming from that geography. Why? Because in that geography, Microsoft, Google, and Amazon, they entered very late. And by the time they entered, most of the local cloud service providers had fair share of business. Now, Microsoft, Google, and AWS has entered into that geography. It will just increase the competition. So these small players will need to do everything possible to retain their customers and not lose them to these big players. That's it. Business is all about competition. Business is all about providing greater experiences to your customers so that they stay with you. All right, moving on, guys. Now, these are the advantages of public cloud. The first advantage is scalability and agility. Scalability, as I said, let's look at the on-premises data center first. An on-premises data center has a hardware. Let's say you purchase a hardware from Dell, IBM, HP, they are the hardware providers. You purchase a server which has 20 CPU core and 100 gigabyte of RAM. And you also purchase some storage which is 500 GB of storage. Now from this hardware, you provision a couple of virtual machines and you host applications on it. You do not get the scalability here. You are frozen in time. Why you are frozen in time? Because you will continue to have those CPU cores and RAM and storage. If you need more capacity, you will need to procure new hardware, which will take couple of weeks. However, in cloud, you have scalability. Scalability means if you want to expand your hardware or virtual machine configuration, let's say you start with 20 CPU cores, 100 GB of RAM, 500 GB of storage. Now you want to increase the capacity from 20 to 40, 100 to 200, 500 to 1 terabyte, 1000 GB, which is equivalent to 1 terabyte. This is available. So cloud gives you that scalability. Agility is flexibility, that you don't need to actually call Microsoft. Let's say you're using Microsoft Cloud. You don't need to raise a support request with Microsoft, tell them a week in advance that you will need more capacity. No, it's agility. Agility means you have flexibility and elasticity, scalability, agility, elasticity. These are tightly coupled, topics. So you get the flexibility to actually scale your environment on demand whenever you need it. And you can scale that back. You can scale it back also, scale out also. So let's say you are running a web application. It's an e-commerce business that you are running. Now you are running a campaign because Diwali is around the corner. You're running a campaign and you will be offering products and services at a discounted price. As a result of this campaign, you will expect more customers to come visit your website and shop, from your website, which will require extended hardware to accommodate those additional, customer traffic. So what you do, a day before your campaign scheduled, you will just increase the hardware and the campaign will run on the next day, whatever is the duration for that campaign. Once that campaign is over, you will bring that hardware back to the original condition. That is scaling out. So scale in and scale out is available with cloud and it is on demand. You don't need to write an email to Microsoft a week in advance that this is what you will be doing. No, it's all available. That's the benefit of public cloud. Second benefit, you will only pay for what you use. Unlike an on-premises data center, if you're doing the similar exercise in on-premises data center, you write an email or you pick up the phone, speak to your vendor and tell them, what, I'm going to run a campaign a week from now. I need more capacity. Can you just send me another server with this configuration? They said, okay, they'll send you that server. You will need to pay upfront for that server. After a week, that server is of no use for you, but you cannot get your money back. You will, because you already have paid for it. So that's capital expenditure that you have already invested. Now you use that server. If you don't use it, your money is already gone. With cloud, it's pay as you go. Now let's come to the cloud. You increase the capacity by certain cores, gigabyte storage. You run that campaign. After the campaign is over, next day you don't need that capacity. You can scale out. cloud service provider will only charge you for the number of hours, days, or minutes that you were using that increased capacity. That's pay-as-you-go pricing, which is the benefit of public cloud. Third, you're not responsible for the maintenance or updates of the hardware. You're consuming that service from the cloud, which is running on some data centers on some hardware in the backend. You're not responsible for maintaining and updating that hardware. That's not your responsibility. Fourth, you need very technical knowledge to set up and use. Even if you've not worked with public cloud in the past, public cloud service providers provides you an infrastructure through which you can quickly sign up and you can build your services with minimum technical knowledge. So these are the advantages of public cloud. Use cases: you can quickly deploy a web application or a blog site quickly, and then you focus on maintaining the site without having to worry about purchasing, managing, and maintaining the hardware on which it runs. So you can quickly deploy applications in cloud and make them available to your end users and customers. That's the benefit. It has its own disadvantages as well. Okay, first, not all scenarios fits the public cloud. As I said, you could have some geographical restrictions, geographical compliances, government, governance, restrictions. So not everything will go to the cloud, can go to the cloud. You also have technical restrictions. You're running an application on Windows Server 2003 with .NET 2.5, cannot move to the cloud. Cloud doesn't support it. So not everything fits the cloud. Government policies, industry standards, legal requirements, cloud could be a barrier. You don't own the hardware or services. You cannot manage them as you may want to. Let's say you move to the cloud, but you have in mind that you want to manage it by yourself. No, it is their cloud. They will manage it. You will consume it. So the model is you consume it, don't manage it. Unique business requirement. As I said, you have a legacy application that cloud cannot meet. So these are the advantages and disadvantages of public cloud. Any question on this slide, guys? Just give me 1 minute here. All right, so that was on the public cloud. Now let's understand the advantages and disadvantages for the private cloud. So first of all, characteristics. Hardware for the private cloud is owned and managed, purchased, maintained by the organization who builds that private cloud. Users, they are part of that organization. They could be vendor and partners as well, but they're part of the organization. Connectivity is over a VPN tunnel, private network, which is known as VPN. Access to the public is typically not allowed for a private cloud applications. Skills, yes, it requires deep technical knowledge to set up, manage, and maintain the private cloud. In order to build a private cloud, you need to learn the virtualization first. It is available from VMware, Hyper-V, and Citrix. They are the major virtualization technology vendors, and they provide virtualization softwares using which you can build a private cloud. So if you want to build that private cloud, you need to have good expertise in these softwares. Then you need to have good expertise in the networking and storage, because that is also required to build a private cloud. You need to have good expertise into security, though that cloud belongs to yourself, your employees only, but there could be security concerns. So you will also need to, accommodate or factor security there. That's private cloud. Now let's talk about the advantages. Let's hear from the participants. What could be the advantages of private cloud? You need to think from the same factor, these same factors on which we differentiated public cloud. Let's differentiate the advantages and disadvantages of the private cloud on those factors. Nivedita.
Security, as it is owned by the single organization, so the within organization, it will be restricted for that organization only. So security one, I think, as an advantage.
Okay. Dilip. Point taken, Nivedita. Dilip.
Yes, Raghuveer. So yeah, I second to Nivedita what she said. Like it's owned by the private organization, so user base is limited, so they have to handle very limited request of storage and security and access, all of the things. I think those are the advantages I can think of.
Great. Harshit, other than what Dilip and Nivedita has talked about.
So preferably the design and the modeling which we kind of require, right? That can be done as per the requirement.
Okay, so it basically meets your requirements. I'm saying you can
Correct.
the
The
solution.
framework, model, or let's say the technologies we actually want to incorporate, right? That we can actually decide.
Okay, Henry.
Yep.
What do you say, Henry?
So say that again.
What is your take on advantages of the private cloud?
I think the main advantage is that it keeps everything from being externally accessed. It keeps everything tied to the one organization.
Yep, absolutely. All right. What could Akshay? Yes.
Data security.
Okay. So you're saying that private cloud is more secure as compared to public cloud?
Yeah, I mean, when you have restricted to one organization, when you have a private cloud, then of course, data security is something that is typically with nowadays with work from home and with multiple, local providers. So data security is something each organization or each hosting team is probably is more concerned about.
Okay. All right. Point taken. Amit.
Fixed area of operations, because it can be extended by limited selected users only.
Okay. Yep. Point taken. Dinesh.
Yeah, you can design as per your own requirement to support if there are any legacy softwares or legacy applications in your environment that can support.
Okay. Monica.
Security one, and maybe it can be built as per our budget, because it is limited to one organization, so the cost can be less and we can build it as per our requirements.
Okay. Yep.
So whatever
Any
is our
new point? So most of you are talking about this is as per our requirement. Security is there. We can control the budget. Any additional point that comes to somebody else's mind?
Maintenance.
Okay. Is that an advantage or disadvantage?
Disadvantage.
Advantage also.
advantage also, because I think since it is owned by corporate, and of course maintenance is needed even if it is public or private cloud. Ultimately, they are the data centers, right? So it can be performed when needed by the corporate.
Absolutely. All right. So all of you have raised, great points, and we basically, circled around. This is as per our requirement. It provides us more security. It is secure. We can manage the, budget. We can maintain the environment. These are the 4 pointers that I have collectively received from all of you. Let's see those advantages now. So first, which you have rightly said, that you can ensure the configuration supports your scenarios and applications. So great point, Harshit. Second, you have control and responsibility, which all of you have said that you have control and responsibility over security. When it comes to public cloud is public cloud follows a shared responsibility model when it comes to security, which basically means that security of the cloud is cloud service providers' responsibility. However, security in the cloud is customer's responsibility. What it means, you're hosting a virtual machine in the cloud. The security of the underlying infrastructure on which virtual machine is hosted is the Azure responsibility. But security inside the virtual machine, which is the data that you keep inside the virtual machine, the application that you host on the virtual machine is your responsibility. So it's a shared responsibility model. Public cloud. When it comes to private cloud, you are whole and sole responsible and have complete control on the security, both of the cloud and in the cloud. So that's what the advantage of public cloud, private cloud is, that security is your responsibility. You have complete control, which means that if you host an application in private cloud, which needs to comply to a certain regulations, you will not fail that regulation because of some negligence by your service provider. If you had the same application hosted in public cloud with Microsoft Azure, and if you fail somewhere, you will be penalized for it and you will need to pay fine for it. Azure will not take the responsibility, because and the problem could be there with Azure. So that's the advantage and disadvantage. I'll give you a great example here, which has happened most recently. So I designed a solution for one of the client. I will not take the name of the client, but that client is into managed services provider, and that client has its offices across Europe, both in UK as well as other European countries, a couple of offices in US and couple of offices in India. And client has majority of their employees working from India. I designed a SIM solution for the client, SIM solution, wherein the solution was Microsoft's Azure Sentinel. And since the client has majority of their workloads in Microsoft Azure, we decided to go with Microsoft Azure Sentinel. When I designed the solution, I kept security and privacy in mind, and I said, for the India workloads, all the monitoring data will be stored in India. For UK, it will be the same case. For rest of the Europe, it will be the same case. And or for US, it will be the same case. So what I did, I created a couple of storage repositories, which is known as log analytics in Azure language. So I created log analytics, vault or storage vault, in one in India, so that all the data from India is stored in India, one for UK, one for US, and one for Netherlands. That's what I did. So I ended up creating 4 vaults, and then I enabled because all of those sites were connected with each other. Then I enabled the service, and I would only transfer the data from, and the US was their central geography because that's where they have their headquarters. So the Sentinel service was in US. So I would only transfer the metadata, which will not contain any PII information, any information which violates a compliance to US. That's how I designed the solution. 2 months later, they came back to me. They actually had internal conversation with their service provider who hired me for consulting. And they said that we are receiving a bill of $25,000, which is too much. We don't want this bill. We want to reduce it. Let's just consolidate everything and let's just go to US. Let's just keep everything in US, which means all the data from India is flowing all the way over the internet under sea cables to US. Same is the case from UK and Netherlands. When that happens, no challenge was there, but a month later, they got a notice from, by virtue of GDPR because they violated GDPR. How they violated? There is no data residency and data localization law in India as we speak. The government of India is coming up with one. Let's say how much time it takes. When it comes to US, all the data from the US was going into the US vault. So there was no compliance on the US part also. There was no compliance from the UK part also because UK is now out from that treaty, EU treaty, and it doesn't actually follow the GDPR compliances. But Netherlands, which is part of the European treaty, that's where the trouble happened. What happened? Every country, when they have certain compliances, they also have some measurements or some capabilities through which they measure the flow of data, how data is, what data is going out, what data is coming in my geography. So that software, whatever they use in European Union, it captured that transition, that transfer of data. So it captured that, that almost 200 GB of data is getting transferred out of our network and is flowing into US every day. Since the data size was huge, so it was easily captured. And then they sent them a notice. They said you are in violation of GDPR and they fined. So they fined them with $500,000, euro. That was the fine that was put on the client. The client was like restless. What should I do? When you are into the violation of local regulations, government regulations, there is absolutely very limited thing that you can do. You have no option but to follow the fine. You need to pay the fine. Otherwise, you cannot do business in that geography with immediate effect. They will cancel your license. They will stop your business. They can take whatever measures they feel is good for their country, is good for their citizens of the country. So this customer actually ended up, filing a lawsuit and then they had to settle it. The case is going on and I know for sure they will end up paying this amount. And by the time they do not pay this amount, they had to shut down all their operations from Netherlands because the government will not allow unless and until you fix the issue. So this is how it happens. I would say there are times when you prefer money over, design, when you prefer budget over design, or when you actually neglect the security requirements and then you end up paying more. So this is like penny wise, pound foolish. That's exactly what happened in this customer's case because they wanted to avoid their $25,000 of bill. So in order to save $25,000, they will now end up paying €500,000, and it also brought a lot of damage to their business and reputation, and they have almost lost their business from that geography. Customers are just kind of ending their contract premature with the client. So that's what the challenge is. I will not say that just because it is happening in public cloud you should not go to public cloud. No, you need to follow the shared responsibility model. They will be responsible for the security of the cloud. You will be responsible for the security in the cloud. If you feel that there is a service which is very expensive and you cannot afford it, do not create workarounds. Just do not use that service. This customer created a workaround. I was saved because I had written a very strong email to the leadership telling them well in advance that you will be caught and the fine that you will end up paying will be more than what you will end up saving in the next couple of months. And that's exactly what happened. I did that because I had experience, I had seen corporates losing their reputation and their money because of these compliances a number of times. So you don't need to get into the detail of security for sure, at least at this age when you are starting to learn cloud. But security is one domain which is very wide and which requires a lot of considerations. And when it comes to public cloud, security is more significant. Do not get the assumption that cloud is not secure. Cloud is more secure than an on-premises deployment. Why? Cloud service providers has more money, more experts available to them to actually secure the cloud, which a corporate may not have. You may have a very limited budget to purchase a security software. You may have only one person who knows something of security. If I specifically talk about Microsoft Azure is spending 1 billion US dollar every year. Microsoft has employed 3,500 plus security professionals whose job is to just protect the Microsoft environment. That's the scale of investments that Microsoft has done. Same is the case with AWS and Google. Some minute differences, but almost same. Now, can you imagine having spent that budget and those many employees, employing to this? No. So cloud is more secure than an on-premises environment. It is just the right decision, right calculation, right design that you need to go with. I hope that is making sense, guys. Dinesh, you have some question? Right. So
no, Raghuvar. I think it's the previous one.
please hands down, guys, because when I see on my screen that somebody has raised hand, I feel that that person has something to add or something to ask. Okay. So that was about security. Let's move on. Then comes, yes, when I talk about private cloud, since this is in your control, you can identify what all security controls, regulations, compliances you need to adhere to, and you can create a design accordingly. Now, disadvantages. What could be the first disadvantage of private cloud? Dinesh, I'll start with you. What could be the disadvantage?
Disadvantage is the maintenance. So you need to maintain entire thing because it's privately owned by you. So it's need to be maintained. Security point of view as well as the hardware point of view, you need to maintain it.
Maintenance is both advantage and disadvantage. Let's talk about the disadvantage, which is the disadvantage actually.
So yeah, private cloud is only by you. Okay, if there are some sites which need to be accessed by globally, by the public demand, so you can't do that. Means if there are some websites like for the Google or something, it need to be accessed by the outside world also. It's not accessible by them. So it's one of the disadvantages. Yeah.
All right, point taken. What about cost?
Yeah, it
Budget.
is expensive.
Expenses
and scale.
Expenses, right? If you have very limited budget, you can route that budget to your core business, your core product and service that you offer to the customer, and the saving that you do from the security budget, from the hardware budget can be routed there. That's so the model that private cloud is built on, which is CapEx, capital expenditure. You can save that money and route it to some other initiatives which are more important to the organization. That's first disadvantage. So you have some initial CapEx cost and must purchase the hardware. Second, owning the equipment limits the agility. As I said, private cloud means you are frozen in time. You purchase, then you are stuck with that configuration only. You do not have the benefit of scalability, agility, and elasticity. It also requires skills. You will need to hire employees. Now, a use case for private cloud, as I said, anything that cannot go into the public cloud because of security restrictions, because of obsolete or outdated technology or legacy application could be a use case for private cloud. Example, government policy, if it requires some specific data to be kept in country or privately, private cloud. In fact, there is no government policy. Let's say there is no government policy in India, but my data is very critical for my business. I will not move that data into public cloud. I will continue to maintain 100% control on my data. And how can I do it? By continuing to retain it into the private cloud. Now, when it comes to the hybrid, can I think of a hybrid scenario wherein I will take the advantages of the public cloud, at the same time I will maintain the security of my data, which is, let's say you have a three-tier application, which has a front-end tier, which is running web applications, a middle tier, wherein you have actually deployed your application, and a backend tier, which hosts your databases, where the actual data is stored and kept. What you could do, you can have your front-end and middle tier hosted in public cloud, and your database tier retained in your private cloud, in your on-premises data center. That way, you have complete control on your data. So you're maintaining the security, but at the same time, you're taking advantage of the benefits that cloud provides, which is high availability, which is scalability, elasticity. So that could be a scenario. And this is the scenario which I have seen a couple of organizations following, because they still don't believe that cloud is as secure as their on-premises deployments are, or cloud could be more secure than their on-premises deployments. So this could be a use case, guys.
I think just one thing, Raghuveer, I would like to add here. Like, I mean, in the in the on-premise infrastructure, I mean, we have this DMZ layers. I mean, where we have, I mean, web application exposed to the outside of the world. So we have it in DMZ1, and the databases and all the backend systems we have in more secured network layer, which is DMZ4 layer.
Okay.
So I think, I mean, same applies to this public and private. I mean, that web applications front end can be exposed in public, and the databases and the core data can be in private.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the concept of networking. How do you design network? How do you segment it? Uh, that network into smaller networks, and then how do you position workloads basis on the, basis on their tier and type, and basis on the security requirements that they need to adhere to. So you're absolutely right. And as I've given this example, in fact, you can create a similar design in cloud, wherein you have a perimeter network, your DMZ network. There you put your DDoS solution, your CDN solutions, your firewall solutions. Then you have the internal network or trusted network, wherein you put your databases. You put certain controls on the, on the databases, and you put certain controls on your perimeter network. So when you get into the more into the security field, you will be, familiarized, or you will get introduced to two concepts. One is defense in depth, the other is zero trust architecture. So I would rather suggest you to read about these terminologies: defense in depth, zero trust architecture, from the cloud perspective, and you will get more idea. You will actually appreciate that how cloud can be more secure and how cloud aligns with these concepts. Okay, great. Let's move on. So hybrid cloud, resource location, resource are in public and private. Cost, I'm saying it will be a bit higher because it involves private setup as well. Control, organizations will retain management control in the private cloud, and the management control in the public cloud will be retained by the service provider. Okay. Then comes Nivedita. You have something to add?
Yes, actually, I have one question. It may sound foolish. As we are talking about the hybrid cloud and the designing, so like it's a combination of public and private cloud. So is it something like it's limited that I can use only one cloud platform in the combination, or I can use the multiple platform as well? Let me elaborate. For database system, I want to go with Oracle as I feel that it's more trusted. So can I use backend tier as Oracle OCI, and for other tiers I can go with a Microsoft Azure or AWS? Whether that combination will be allowed in a hybrid cloud?
Yeah. We typically call it multi-cloud solution.
Okay.
Multi-cloud solution which are configured in hybrid arrangement. So you're saying that your front end and middle tier goes in AWS, Azure and GCP, but your back end goes into Oracle. Now you're talking about integrating two clouds. These are competitors. They may not allow APIs to be available through which you can integrate these clouds. So what you do typically, you have a hub, a central location. You connect all of these clouds with that central location. This is known as networking in a multi-cloud environment, right? So what you do, you have one office that you consider as hub. So what you do, you send all the traffic from Azure AWS to that hub, and then from that hub you send the traffic to the other cloud, because clouds do not connect directly with each other. That's what you can do. So this design is very much possible. However, this design has some complexities around it, some security requirements that comes into the picture. If you're able to address those complexities and security requirements, you can do this design. But to be honest, I have not seen this design as because of the complexity and security that it brings, and
maybe cost
and the
as well.
cost that will go into making this possible. As I said, these are competitors. Competitors do not talk to each other. And you are actually trying to connect them with one another by a mediator. That mediator is a central site. So yes, this design is possible. Large corporates uses this design, but they typically abstain from hosting applications which comprises this design. They basically create this design because they have multi-cloud presence. They have some applications in Azure, some in GCP, some AWS, some Oracle, and those applications needs to communicate with each other. Those are distinct applications.
Yeah.
But they need to communicate. For example, I worked with a manufacturing customer in US, which uses Informatica, which uses Salesforce, which uses SAP, which uses SharePoint, which uses Dynamics. Now, what happens when they are doing their manufacturing, when they are running, when they are you know building their products, the information with respect to that product is entered into the SAP. Then Informatica fetches that information. It does some processing on it. Then Informatica dumps it into a SharePoint, and then through SharePoint, Dynamics is fetching that information, which means all of those applications are communicating with one another, and they have a huge dependency. And this customer is a multi-cloud. So what this customer is doing, the SAP is actually hosted in SAP Cloud. The Informatica is hosted in Azure. SharePoint is also part of Azure, but it's a SaaS solution. Then their Dynamics, they are hosting on premises. So they have actually enabled the solution, but in the entire solution, one application is local to a cloud service provider. They are not expanding the application across cloud. If they do so, then the complexity will increase. So large corporates will have similar solution, but they will not expand the application tiers across cloud. They will actually make applications communicate with each other. That's what they do. I hope that is making sense, Nivedita.
Yeah. Thank you for answering my question.
Right. So hybrid scenarios can be useful when you cannot put something into the cloud for legal reasons or any other reasons, but you actually need to use public cloud. So, for example, medical data relates to HIPAA compliance in US, wherein a patient's information, which relates to its personal data as well as medical history or ailment history or pathological reports, all of this needs to, all of this needs to be stored in a secure channel, and it should only be available to the doctors, not anyone else. If if somebody else comes to know about someone's ailment or someone's health issues, then it's a violation of HIPAA compliance, and it happens in US a lot. Companies get why, I'm saying they by mistake or by design, and there are times when intentionally they get into these violations and then they end up paying, legal suits happens. So it happens a lot in US. Okay, advantage of hybrid cloud. I'll just open the entire slide for you. Please give it a quick read and let me know if you have any questions on the hybrid cloud. All right, any questions on this slide? One. Another slide. Now, this is another comparison slide which talks about the characteristics, advantages and disadvantages of public, private and hybrid cloud. Give it a quick read and let me know if you have any questions on this.
Yes, Raghuvi, I have one question for private cloud. So
Mhm.
when we say private cloud, so I mean that infrastructure and those resources, so those will be hosted on the cloud service provider data center, or I mean those infrastructure and everything will be in-housed in the organization.
Both.
Okay.
You can have a data center built within your office premises. You can
Mhm.
also go into co-location, which means you rent a data center space in some other data center providers. There are some companies who provide data center space. For example, Sifi in India, Cloud4C, they provide you data center spaces. Similarly, in US, SunGuard provides you with data center spaces. So you can use that. I would say building a data center requires some, some investments.
Yeah.
If you don't have that investment, then you have an option of co-location, wherein there are businesses who are into data center space. They provide you a space in their data center wherein you can, you can put your own hardware, or you can in fact purchase a hardware from them or rent a hardware from them. And on the top of that hardware, you can build your services, which is private cloud. So both the options are there.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Raghuvi. So Raghuvi, then what is the concept of on-premises and off-premises? I mean, on-premises means when we have our hardware and everything set up in our data center, that is on-premises. And off-premises, suppose if I have data, I am using data center at Microsoft site or Microsoft data center, then it is off-premises, right?
No, if it is Microsoft data center, then it's cloud.
Okay.
That's the differentiation is. If it is some other, so as I said, I mean, say, if you don't have enough space, if you don't have enough budget, if you don't have, capacity or employees who can build private cloud solution for you, you can hire a third party and you can rent a space. For example, Airtel in India provides data center spaces. So you can just connect with Airtel, say that in your data center that you have in, Gurgaon, I will just need a rack on which I will be putting my hardware and I will be building a private cloud solution from there.
Okay.
do it. That will still remain on, it will be a co-location. That's the reason the terminology is co-location. On
Okay.
premises, co-location, and cloud. These are the three terminologies. So you can build your private cloud in a in your on-premises data center, inside your on-premises, data center. You can build a private cloud in a co-location arrangement, and a public cloud will always remain Microsoft, AWS, and GCP data centers. That's
Okay.
public cloud.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Because in the co-location as well as on-premises arrangement, you have control on the hardware.
Mhm.
But in case of Microsoft, which is public cloud, you don't have control on the hardware.
Okay.
They maintain the hardware, and you only maintain and control the application that you are running on the top of that hardware. That's the differentiation.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
So this is another slide. I've got a couple of slides. I'll continue to improvise my slide deck that I use in the training. Whenever I get good slides, good information from anywhere, from any source, I'll include that into it. So you will see 2, 3 slides which differentiates between public, hybrid, and private cloud. Moving on.